Welcome back, Sainers, here for another week of the teams. Thursday night, we're here at 6:30, which is much better time because the teams have just been released. We're going to discuss some, the news, the couple of changes that we made from Richmond's game. We will discuss a little bit about Richmond and then what we can preview as well as we head into Canberra on Saturday afternoon. So, bringing on my guests as well. So we've got Alana back this week. Bringing in Tom, and we've got Jake as well, who's making his team's debut. Welcome to the show, Jake. And welcome, Tom and Alana, as well. It's great to have you both back. Let's start with Richmond before we get into the teams quickly. Just share your thoughts on how we went, and as well for those that are watching at home. It was sort of a tale of two halves. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on what you thought and what we need to change going forward.
Yeah, what a roller coaster. I think that first half I was ready to just turn off the TV, which is not normally the case at halftime. I don't think I've ever been so negative in a half of footy as I was on the weekend. I was just like, what is this? This is disgusting. And to our credit, the old St Kilda just would have done that. They would have packed up the bag, see you later. So I actually was really quite impressed with how we came out in the second half. Whatever Ross said seems to have done the job. And, yeah, we got the job done. So I don't know how after that abysmal first half, but we did. And that third quarter was actually quite exciting and really like Saints footy. So if we can bring that for 4 quarters, bring it on. But, yeah, we just need to do that for 4 quarters.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like the third quarter especially, it was absolutely electric. It was fast, it was fluent, it was smooth, and it was very just purpose-based. Go forward. Let's bring it to ground. Let's, create the pressure. Tom, I want to get your thoughts. When our best footy is on, we're, a hell of a team. What can we do to bridge that inconsistency gap that we've got at the moment?
Oh, God, it's hard to – I mean, it's the $1 million question, isn't it? That's been what plagues us for years. And, I feel like the game on the weekend was the most quintessential St Kilda game of football where you can be – sitting there for a half thinking, God, I hate supporting this club. And then the third quarter comes around, you're like, let's book finals tickets. Like it's the ups and downs. So I genuinely wish I had an answer to that question. I'm sure Ross wishes he had an answer to that question. I don't know. I mean, I guess when maybe missing a couple of players, like a couple of key players structurally, but it doesn't – the thing that's upsetting when you see that first half is that it feels like a lot of it comes down to effort. And I feel like for a long time you can kind of tell how we're going to play based on the first 5 minutes of footy, whether we're bringing it or not. And that's what gets, incredibly frustrating. So if we bring the effort.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of mistakes that just – whether it was a mental thing, I feel like us as a club for – maybe even the last sort of 10, 15 years is those games against lower ranked sides, whether it be the week before the media, downplaying, a Richmond or a North Melbourne or, going to the start of the year where, North Melbourne's not going to be that good. So we sort of pencil that in for an automatic W. And you can just tell we dropped to their standard. Because I think the third quarter showed, the game against Collingwood showed, the second quarter against Essendon showed our best is probably a top 6 team at the moment. When we're playing our best, but the lack is, or the thing at the moment is the consistency, and it's just not showing. And I think it's becoming a mental thing that we're just going to breeze through. We're going to get the easy chocolates. Let's not get any injuries. Let's get King sort of cottoned up and Steele running through not injured. I think those sort of things at the moment are just hanging too much on their heads, and they're just expecting it to win against those lower ranked sides. Jake, again, welcome to teams. First time you've been on this year. I mean, you watch the Saints a lot, and obviously everyone's going to know, what you think. You do your previews and everything. But what's sort of missing at the moment from our team basis, from whether it be backline, forward line, midfield? What's the key to actually turn this around to make it a 3.5 quarter effort rather than a 1 quarter effort?
Oh, I think attitude's number one. I think, like you said, we do take the bottom teams a bit easier, or maybe we go into the games a little bit more complacent than usual. And then you couple that with the oval itself, like rocking up. It's not a big crowd. what Jack Steele said, probably, just hints at just a bit of a lack of intensity, at least in the first half. And then halftime comes and Ross Lyon gives them a bit of a blast and they come out. But field-wise, it's still the forward line, at least for me. I still don't know what our best mix is. Like, how many smalls do we go with? How many talls do we go with? The first half last week, it looked like Caminiti, King, Membry, Sharman just didn't work. Sharman's on a wing at some points. He's at half back. Caminiti's not impacting. And then King's doing his best work on a wing, which controversially, I think I just can't stand seeing him that high up the ground anyway, because he's our number one forward. And I think if we're going to beat a team like the Giants, maybe not against Richmond, but the team like the Giants, we're going to win if King's kicking 3 or 4, and that means he's playing closer to goal. And we beat him last year over interstate, and what did he do? He kicked 4 on return because he played close to goal. So I feel like we need to get that balance right. Membry has been a bit down the last couple of weeks for me, and Owens, midfield and forward, there's still that ongoing battle. Like, what do we do? So I feel like that's the biggest headache for Ross is that forward half.
And I think you hit the nail on the head because there's not only Caminiti. I think Owens is in the mix there, Filippo as well. Butler's looked a bit poor since his return. There's probably 5 or 6 players at the moment that just can't seem to knock down and nail down a spot in that position, whether it be a forward flank, a wing. I was going to say Cooper Sharman's another one. He's been floated around. I think he's played nearly every position so far this year in the games he's played. So it's sort of like that's inconsistency for spots at the moment is then resulting in the inconsistency in output as well.
Yeah, pretty much our back line is the only area on the field where you look at and you go, those players, they're not changing week to week. They're a lock. But you go like Caminiti, question mark, Membry, even question mark sometimes. Owens, where does he play? We don't know. Sharman, he's been all over the joint the last 3 weeks. Higo, he's good and he's bad at the same time. And it's frustrating. Filippo in the guts hasn't really hit the ground running like we wanted. And then obviously the big one was Steele last week. He looks like he's back to his All-Australian form, so that's good. But there's a lot of, I guess, changing parts outside of the back half, which is a bit of a headache. Looking at the lineup now, I'm just scratching my head like, hopefully these boys stand up against a good team on the weekend.
Yeah, and absolutely. Just before I bring up the teams, we'll discuss those ins and outs as well. There's a comment here from Marcus that I just want to bring up. The players and how they warmed up and they looked lethargic, unprepared, and didn't seem to want to win. And I feel like that may come back on what Jack Steele probably said post-game, in the fact that the feel of it was more of a community series, a preseason game, rather than a 4 points on the line, AFL regular season game. I think Tom and Alana both watched from home. Did you guys see that on the TV as much, especially through the first half where it was just, very lackadaisical, very just, go with the flow and then that's it?
Yeah, it's funny. It actually reminded me of going way back when Grant Thomas used to say he could tell in the warm-up if the Saints were switched on or not, and it actually brought back memories of that because I feel like, I couldn't obviously see much of the warm-up as such, but as soon as the game started, it was just like very sloppy. Just that's how I would describe it, just sloppy. And I was like, it's just going to be one of those days. And how do we get the boys switched on? Because they're clearly not. But maybe we do need a bit of that Ross back, who's not so cuddly, because it clearly worked. I mean, unless he shooed the aliens away, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Go, Tom.
I was just going to say, I think we need to get the aliens playing each week. Clearly, that was the difference.
I think even listening to Ross's presser, I think it was today, just before they leave for Canberra, it sort of seems like he's changed his tune a little bit. I think he's comfortable with where the list is at. I think there's still some things that they would obviously love. They would love Mason Wood back, Liam Henry back, 2 players that are key. But I think he knows that there is something there, but they're just not putting it in. He was very direct in his messaging. It went for about 3.5 minutes. If you get, any of you guys that are watching it from home, or you three, if you get a chance to watch it, he's really, really sort of got a good insight as to where he's at, because he was very direct. He lamented the inconsistency and the fact that we can't play 4 quarters at the moment. He was very direct in not singling out players. There was a few comments from reporters focused on Jack Steele, Jack Sinclair. He's like, no, we're a team. And he called out Giants as well. He said, look, they're statistically one of the best teams in the competition at the moment, if not the best. If we're not going to be prepared to play 4 quarters of football, then we're going to get found out. And I think that messaging was really strong, and a direct message to the players to say, this is the time to sort of head down, butt up, and let's get to work and really start, kick firing our season a little bit as well. So just before, again, as bringing out the teams, comment here from Steve. Not sure that the point debuting your first game or as a sub, didn't see enough of Hasty, then he's dropped. Absolutely. I think this case is probably even worse, the fact he played 2 games as a sub. We discussed it previous weeks, but I think Alana's, and I think Tom might be on the same page as me, that it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, Hasty played, the last 10 minutes of the Essendon game or something? And then he came on with 3 or 4 minutes to go. Didn't register a stat last week, and you don't expect him to with 2 minutes to go, and he gets subbed. It just doesn't make. And then Collard comes on, and King doesn't give him the ball twice, and he gets stuffed up from that. And now Garcia, I don't know. I'd love to just throw them into the deep end. I thought last week was a good chance to play Wilson, debut Garcia and Collard as well. I thought that was a good opportunity against Richmond to just, inject some youth into the team and not just kind of put them as a sub and bring them on when the game's either done and dusted and we've lost, or it's too heated for them to even get into the game. So hopefully Garcia gets a bit more of a go this week. He's a bit of a bigger boy. Collard and Hasty are probably on the lighter side, so I would imagine we'd probably be more comfortable with him. For a half would be nice.
We'll see. Absolutely. What about you and Alana? Alana and Tom, with Hugo Garcia. I'm going to bring up the teams now as well. But obviously we know don't put him in as a sub because we're not going to like it. But where's his best position for this week?
Well, he looked good in the preseason playing midfield minutes. I'm not sure if that was planned, because I think he it seemed like in the preseason he went in there after Windy hurt himself. But he looked good there. I do feel like the overwhelming likelihood is that Ross is going to sub him. Just because we've seen that many times now with Collard and then Hasty. But yeah, I guess if he's playing, he's looked good through the middle. You probably don't have him as one of your main people rotating through there. Although I'd rather him rotating through there than Filippo. I feel
that's a good point. Have Filippo just in the forward line and have Owens and Garcia rotate that mid forward role.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was going to say you could switch with Filippo and rotate. So yeah, seems.
I think Filippo's lost just a little bit of edge at the moment. Whether it's a lack of confidence, maybe he's sort of overworked himself in the preseason, which is a possibility. But he does look a little bit sort of overtired and exhausted, sort of unable to get into the game. So maybe sticking him forward for a week or two just to get him hit the scoreboard a bit, get him to clunk a few contested marks, I think will be a good option. Just before we discuss those Hugo Garcia and Windhager ins for Jones and for Hasty, I want to bring up a comment here from Sets Back Speaker. So I don't have an exact name, but we need height to help Marshall and King. Hammond needs to work on the forward craft instead of playing second ruck. Now, last week was the first week that we had King, Membry, Sharman, and Caminiti all playing the same lineup. Although Sharman did sort of spend majority of his time on the wing. From my end, I didn't think it worked, and I don't like it. But I want to get your guys' opinions and those that are watching from home. Can the 4 sort of tools all play in the same team? And if not, then who misses out and who comes in?
That's a tricky one. I mean, it's going to be even more difficult when Jack Hayes is fit in a week or two, isn't it?
That was going to be my next point as well.
I mean, he's obviously a straight in because he can go in the ruck and be that sort of rotation really that we've missed with Rowe. I dare say it's between Sharman and Caminiti to really lift, isn't it, in the next week or two, I would say.
Yeah. I was going to say you can't. Oh, sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say I think Sharman gives that flexibility that Caminiti probably doesn't have, which is an extra Both.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you can have Caminiti, Sharman, and Hayes all in the same team. So someone's going to have to make way when he returns. It's a hard one though, because I think they all offer something a bit different too. But Caminiti, I thought he was quite okay against Essendon. Like he came in, kicked 2 goals, pretty much ticked my box. But last week he was a bit quiet with Butler. Obviously Butler's a small forward, but I almost think he's in the firing line as well too. And just getting that forward structure like Jake touched on, right? It's been something that's bothered me for so long. And the amount of times we kick it into our 50 and you can't tell whether it's the midfields who do the kick wrong or the forwards just don't know where to run. And it was one thing I actually liked about Filippo last week is he actually led and they kicked to him and he marked it. We just don't see that happen often enough. Unfortunately, he didn't kick the goal, but I was actually just like, yes, someone who can lead and knows how to lead in position. And how often do we hit a lead up target? Like it just doesn't happen enough for me. And I don't know whether that's like because they haven't played enough games together or what it is, but it's probably one of the things that frustrates me the most.
I tend to agree with that, and it's a lot of finger pointing at, whether it's the midfield, whether it's the forward line. But we've always had a consistent thing as forwards where we just point to where we want to go but never lead. And that drives me insane, much like yourself. Like it's absolutely insane. Either because worst case scenario, you lead forward, and if you don't get the ball, then there's going to be space out the back for someone like a Higgins or a Butler to follow on and just snag a ground ball, get an easy 6 points. I just don't get the reason as to why we don't do it. In saying that, though, I thought on the weekend, part of that was the midfield as well. I thought there was too many times we stopped the play, took our time, and it allowed the Richmond defence to set up. Nankervis had an absolutely exceptional game intercepting the ball. And it just, that 2-3 seconds that you hesitate and stop allows so much more input from a defensive point to then halt those lead up forwards and open space. And that is something that GWS do really well. They create a lot of space for their forward line and allow open space for their lead up. So that's something that we need to hone in on and really get to work on, because that's the difference between being a good team that scrapes in for finals and being a team that can make a top 4 run.
Yeah. Who did they bring in? Did they have any ins and outs?
They did not, I don't think. Let me double check. No, unchanged lineup. So
yeah, that's when you know a team's in good form.
100%. So Alana, you mentioned Butler. I thought again he was a little bit disappointing against the Twags. Is he the possibility for a sub? There's a few comments here regarding the sub, saying that it should be like an experienced player, an impact player. Does he fit the mold of doing that, but then allowing Hugo Garcia to actually start the game as well?
Yeah, look, I feel like with the sub, the Saints to me are indicating that they're not a fan of the sub rule because they seem to not want to use it. Like, as we've seen, we've only really used it properly when we had to with Wood. And I think I agree with the club. I'm not a fan of it myself. I think it's great when you've got an injury, but it's so hard to pick a player for sub. Like, I want to rule out small forwards because they're opportunists and they only get so many chances. So I don't like them as subs. I don't like your debutants. I don't like your young kids. So, I think I named Zach Jones as my sub player and now he's gone. So, yeah, I think it's a tough one. I think Butler is a potential if he's not doing anything to maybe sub him a bit earlier and get Garcia into the game earlier is what I would do. Even if it's sort of start of the third quarter and the Giants are getting a run on, let's do something and mix it up and get Garcia in, see what he can do. I wouldn't be waiting until, 5-10 minutes left of the game. It's just such a pointless thing to me. So, yeah, I'd be saying to Butler, get your ass into gear basically, because if not, we're going to bring Garcia in and see what he can do. That's probably how I would look at it. Like, I think it's guaranteed Garcia starts as sub. That's just what we seem to want to do.
I really hope not, because I think for me, and Jake and Tom, you can either agree or disagree, but I think he's played as inside mid. I saw his game against Essendon VFL a couple of weeks ago before their break. He was good. He was solid. He's a short lad, but a solid lad. And his contested work's really good. And I think he's got the ability to actually break the packs and then give it to our ball users in Naz and Sinks and, Riley Bonner, who had a better game last week as well. So I think if I was Ross, no better way to actually say to Garcia, look, you've earned your stripes. We're going to chuck you in the middle first bounce. Watch number 12 for the Giants, Tom Green. What better way to actually get yourself into the game and prove to you, not only your peers, but your teammates, but also the coaches and the fans, that this is where you belong. You go against one of the top midfielders in the competition, if not the top, in Tom Green. That's the way I would play it. Worst case scenario, sub him halfway through the third quarter. You get injection of speed of Butler, or in case of like a Jones or those sort of types, to actually finish the game.
Yeah, you've pumped him up there, which means he's definitely sub. So thanks for that.
That's something that I don't think we do enough as well, is like playing young players early in their career in their actual position. Like it is so rare that we recruit, a young midfielder and actually play them in the guts. We so often will just, blood them into the team, running off a half forward flank. And I feel like sometimes it's fair enough, maybe if they don't have the size and you don't want them to just get bullied. But at the same time, like, look at Sam Walsh at Carlton. Like I know he was a massive sort of kid when he came in, but he just played centre bounce midfield from the start, and he's a freak. I feel like you probably, just for growth of the player, of the kids, if we were a bit more prepared to, play young midfielders in the middle a bit more often, that could help. Like, and the case example at the moment for us is Mitch Owens. Let's just stop doing this ruck shit. Let's get him in there as a mid, because he can do it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that we're saying put Garcia in there when there's literally a bigger, more experienced version of him already that we've not even used in that position. So how can Garcia bypass and get that job before Owens? You know what I mean? Even Wilson, it just doesn't make sense. At least, Filippo's the one, isn't he? He's the one getting that consistent time in there. And so far, look, he's been all right, but he's very much a high handball player now, where I kind of think he's more valuable off half forward with his beautiful left foot peg. Like, I just feel like he's getting more disposals and more exposure, but I don't think he's hurting teams as much as he did last year. And that's his first year. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, there's two sides of it as well. You've got the positive that you've got, 3 or 4 players that probably should be playing in the midfield that aren't. And it's really exciting for a future point of view. But also at the same time, we have looked very one-dimensional in the midfield for already a month of the season. There hasn't been too much change. He's dropped Jones, he's brought in Garcia, brought back Windhager, who I thought had a really classy game against the Pies, but then not so good against the Bombers. But there's been no sort of adjustments and manoeuvring of those tags on the whiteboard, and what else can we do? What option A isn't working, what's option B, what's option C, and those sort of things. So I think this week we'll see a lot more Mitch Owens. I thought he played a lot more time in the midfield to what he has last week compared to the previous weeks. And I think they'll look to even use that against it. The big bodies as well, Caniglio, Green. They've got some big body midfielders that he'll be able to take down.
Who gets Toby Green? Is that Cal Wilkie?
Oh, I think it has been. He's played on him before, hasn't he?
I think. Yeah. Did he get him last year in the final? And that was one of Cal Wilkie's worst games for the year, wasn't it? Or did he play on someone else?
No, I think Wilkie played on Green. I think he did a pretty decent job. It wasn't a standout performance.
Yeah, I just meant Green, individually he was not very good. Yeah.
I think it's a bit like Bolton. I just don't think we have anyone. They're A-grade players, and as much as we have a good, just think sometimes you just don't have a matchup for a player. Like Green is an amazing player, and whoever we put on him, he's probably going to touch them up because that's just how good he is. So I think it's just one of those things where, Bolton best on ground, but they don't win the game. Hopefully it's the same scenario for us. But Green, to me, is just such a match winner. So he's scary for mine. He's just everything you want, you wish you had, basically. He's confident. He kicks goals. He's a captain. Yeah. I don't know who. Sorry to whoever we put on him.
If only we played them in 3 weeks' time, Jimmy Webster would have been back for it. because
Would
he's
have been handy.
Those
be
comments, though.
that
I like soccer, and that's why I brought up the comments. Sorry, Tom, I'll let you speak in a sec. But the comments of Zach and Jack, I think Stocker had an okay game last week. And again, much like I mentioned with Garcia, what better way to say, here's your responsibility. You wearing like a glove for 120 minutes. If he scores 2 goals, that's a win for us. Anything above that, I think, then he gets the edge. But he's such a catalyst for him. That I think Stocker can definitely play that part, and I'm assuming you think the same, Tom.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna as soon as those comments came up, I was like, okay, perfect. Like, I think that's the move. I think Stocker's sort of like one of the only players that we've got that has that dog in him that can actually match up with Green, just in terms of like the physicality that he could bring to that contest as well. So yeah, I rate that as a matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch on Membry for a second, Jake, because you mentioned earlier that he hasn't had a few good, maybe a fortnight, maybe a bit longer, where his form hasn't been that great. Just going to bring it up here from Jack. I hate to say it, but if Hayes gets through the BFL this week, which pending any injury curses, touch wood, he should be fine. I would assume next week will be back in the AFL squad as well. Does he come in for Membry, or do you look at bringing him for like a Caminiti for like a like for like?
I think we talked about it before, but it's you can't pick it now. It depends on how Caminiti, Sharman, and Membry go on the weekend. That's battle for spots. That's what you want. So if they all step up, I dare say we probably win the game if they all have a good game on the weekend, and if they don't, then they're all on the chopping block as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
100%. No, I agree with that. Comment here from Tuxter. Can Ronnie Burns play a type of running tag on Green?
No. No.
That was a quick no from that one.
Yeah,
Alana, Tom?
No, I think he's too small. Like, the physicality of Green would just dominate him around the ball.
That's Windhager, if you're going to do it.
I think that they're two sort of different positions as well. You got one who's probably an inside mid clearance work. I think he averages about 9 clearances a game, Tom Green, to Ronnie Burns, who's a run-with player on the outside as a pure wingman. So it's not a like for like. I do like the matchup for Burns to actually play a little bit of a role on Josh Kelly. I think that's a much better matchup, physically, but also game style, to, make him accountable from a tagging point. But again, you don't tag wingmen. You try and burn him on the other end when you go forward.
Yeah, I saw Gus, I think he's just commented. This just popped into my mind before he even said it, but he's on the point. Could we just go Steele head-to-head with Green? Steele goes on Paddy Cripps all the time and breaks even or beats him. Put him on their best player, and he's in his best form in the last 18 months, Jack Steele. Give him that responsibility as captain,
Yep.
We can't be too defensive in this game. I mean, we have to be, obviously, but not that defensive that we've got 2 or 3 players that we're willing to tag in their midfield, because then we're not winning the ball, are we? We're just waiting for them to get it and reacting, and that's when you lose.
Just while we're on Tom Green, there is another suggestion here from Jack as well. Windy did a job on Dacos against Collingwood. I think he played a little bit of a role on Parrish against the Bombers as well, and was okay. Again, I don't think he's a pure tagger, because he's damaging when he does get the ball in hand and by foot. But in a contest work, I think Windy to Green's another option that we've got as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's if you're planning on trying to lock down on Green, he's the logical one.
Yeah, he's the source. The rest of their players are very like Kelly. They're very complimentary. So he's the one that will get it first and get their hands out, and that's when they run and spread. So if you stop it at the source, that run and spread's probably not as effective as it usually is. So yeah, that's a good call.
Absolutely. Now we've focused a lot on the midfield, a little bit on the forward line. It's time to show the defense some love. As we said earlier, there's been very little change, and for good reason. For all the pressure that we've stood for the first 4 weeks of the season, we are still the 3rd best ranked defense in the league. The Giants are actually the second. The Giants are the 3rd. We're the 2nd. I'm going to clarify that because I think that's wrong. But Very even. What has worked so far? There's a comment here that I want to bring up from Jack. Can we give Josh Battle some love? How good's he going getting signed up? Again, I think I mentioned this last week. Both he and Mateus are very close to re-signing. I think that will probably be middle of the season sort of news to sort of bridge the buy gap. But not only Josh Battle, you've got Cordy and Wilkie, those three especially. How good have they been so far?
Yeah,
Really
I was
good.
pretty happy with Battle last week, particularly in the first half when I literally just thought it was him and Steele who were the only ones to me who looked switched on, and maybe Sinclair. The rest not so much. But I thought if I was going to give votes, Battle probably would have got 2 for mine just for a 4-quarter performance. Yeah, he stood out for me. So yeah, he's had a good sort of a bit under the radar, and then I think as Saint supporters, we're starting to notice him more, but I still reckon most other opposition teams probably wouldn't know him, but I think he's starting to make a bit of a name for himself now. Even like his little balks and stuff, he's getting a bit more confidence, and yeah, love to see that. So yeah, he's done well.
He wouldn't be far off the All-Australian squad at the very least, would he? In the 44 at the moment? Or is that going overboard?
No, I think it's a conversation. I'd like to see his ball use get a little bit better, and I mean, Tom, you can hone in on that a little bit as well. But I think he's definitely playing that intercept role, whereas Wilkie's probably playing a little bit more defensive as a lockdown. But he's doing a fantastic job at the moment, especially catapulting back forward for our team.
Yeah, he's just adding dollars to that contract. With the candy show and everything, it's I kind of agree. It sounds good that it's good to know that he's close to signing, but it'd be good to sign him sooner rather than later, just from a financial management perspective. Because if he keeps playing the way he's playing, it's going to cost us a lot more money.
Yeah, Adelaide might offer him a 10-year contract, just like they did Goulden apparently.
Yeah. That was a big call, but I think he's vital to the way that Corey Enright wants to actually set up the defense. Like, you look at our defense, we've got Wilkie, who's an All-Australian, but apart from that, like, it's a very unknown from outside of a St Kilda point of view of who's actually going to do a lockdown job. But it's so effective how they do it. I think Cordy's been absolutely amazing this year from a one-on-one perspective, and I can't wait till he locks on Jesse Hogan and can shut him down to a goal, maybe 2. Who's probably the most informed key forward at the moment in the league.
Yeah. And I think Zane Cordy goes unsung a fair bit for the work that he puts in. Like, and I think it's because when he's got ball in hand, you are on the edge of your seat at times. But defensively, I think he is possibly been our strongest player for the season. I mean, we've got some good ones down there clearly, but his defensive efforts are just incredible. And you don't get the plaudits for that. Like, you see him do a ridiculous, spoil or smother. That's not really getting highlighted that much, and you sort of forget about it, or at least external, neutral fans don't really notice it.
Yeah. And I think like a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about, Dougal or Cordy, and it was that debate, and you may be talking that Howard's that automatic, but the way Cordy's playing, I almost don't think Howard is an automatic selection, obviously depending on our opposition, but I think Cordy's not really done anything wrong, so I think Dougal's actually going to have find it a bit hard to get into that team at the moment, obviously based on matchups, but if I was going to pick one now, I'd be saying Cordy. Yeah,
and I think especially when it comes down to those players are coming back from injury or, working their way up. There's no such thing as an automatic selection anymore. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it possibly was. But I think the defensive side of our game at the moment has been consistently good. Not only through last year, but the start of this year as well. Why would you change it?
Mm-hmm.
Ever since Cordy came in, I mean, I thought personally it was going to be just a one-hit wonder, for a couple of weeks. But I've been surprised, and I'm happy to eat my words with that the effort and output that he's putting in and what he's doing within that structured defensive team, there's no way Howard comes in automatically. You've got to earn your stripes now. You can go play in Sandy for a week or 2 and actually show us that you're better than what we have at the moment.
Yeah. He should play Sandy this week, I'd imagine. Isn't he back to full fitness, or that was the word
He was
this week?
listed as a test.
Yeah, it was
in
test
the,
for this game.
yeah.
So I'd imagine if he's passed the test, he's probably just playing VFL then.
Yeah.
Because we might need him next week. We're playing the Dogs, and they've got how many tools?
Yeah, well, that Darcy's looking pretty good too. So yeah.
So we might be stretched and might have to bring him in regardless.
Mm.
But that's next week's problem. So
Yeah,
that's after we pants the Giants. It's all good.
There's one matchup I do want to sort of get some input from all of you, and again from people at home. Rowan Marshall, I think he's been nearly our most important player, not our best player, but our most important. He comes up against Kieran Briggs, who I thought sort of put him to the sword a little bit in the final last year. And I think this is a really good chance for him to respond and really show us what he can do. How much impact does he have on our team? And how vital is he this week against the Giants?
Yeah, Marshall's huge for our team. I mean, I think even you could say the first half, like Nankervis completely dominated in my eyes the first half of that game, and what were we doing? And then second half, I thought, Marshall come out and played a completely different game. I think I had him as my one vote. To be fair, I could have given the one vote to about 10 players who I ranked about the same in the second half. But I just thought Marshall, to come out like he did after Nankervis really got on top, I thought, in the first half. Like, he was marking everything. He was amongst everything. And Marshall really turned it around that second half. And I think he's sort of the barometer of how we're going. If he's playing well, the team's playing well. So he's crucial to me, yeah.
Yeah, he's massive. He's massive. He's a rare ruckman in the sense that when he's got the ball in hand, you're not too nervous. Although, I mean, there have been a couple of times this year where I feel like he's uncharacteristically made me nervous when he's got the ball. But by and large, I think he tends to be a pretty good mover and a pretty good user as a ruckman with ball in hand. So yeah, he's obviously, if he has a big game, it goes a long way to us winning.
Yeah, and he wins his own clearances too, which is huge. And if our midfield's going to be defensive or beaten to the ball, at the very least, you want Rowe to have that sort of game where he's got 9 or 10 of his own clearances off his own boot and gets that territory game going. Just get it into the forward line and try and lock it in, minimize that clearance work that they're so good at, I reckon. Massive test though.
They are one of the better clearances side. Not even, I mean, from a total clearances, not that great, but from a center clearance perspective, which I think is an area that we've lacked because we've come up against some pretty dominant ruckmen in terms of height and hitouts. I think if we look at the hitout disparity that we've had so far this year, we rank one of the lowest sides in the league. But again, coming up against a ruckman that's around the same height, who's not too much of a hit out to advantage sort of ruckman, he's more of another midfielder, I like to call it, as is Marshall. So I think those two are going to be key pieces for both their sides to be able to grab that, the extra advantage. And if we can beat them in the center clearances, then that's going to go a long way to going back on your point, Alana, to allow our forwards to lead up to the ball and get some easy access to the goals as well. Comment here from Mr. DJ Rudy Boy. Interesting.
DJ Rudy Boy.
Rude Boy. Can we not play Sharman in the ruck to give Rowe a chop out? Again, I think we've sort of highlighted it a little bit already. I think this is why everyone wants Jack Hayes back in the side, because he just adds that extra value, allows Rowe to go forward and to hit the scoreboard. Marshall is definitely the best mobile going around. Corey earned his stripes. More focusing on the first part of that in regards to being the best mobile ruckman going around. So as we look forward to Saturday, what's going to be the key to stop, the orange tsunami and to be able to come away with the chocolates this week?
Pressure and effort is not sounds like a really obvious stupid answer, but if we rock up like we rocked up for the first half against Richmond, we'll be down by 60, 70 points at halftime and won't have a way to get back in the game. So attitude is key, which it always is, but sadly we have to sort of specify that as St Kilda fans at times.
attitude, and we're probably going to have less shots on goal, right? So we've just got to kick. We've just got to take the chances we get. If we're missing set shots from 30 out directly in front, it's not happening. This is a sort of game where every time it goes inside 50, we've got to score, or at least lock it in and have some repeat entries, and then get a score off that. But if we don't, like Tom said, I think it'll be a long day.
Yeah.
Just before you go, Alana, sorry, I just want to bring up another comment here. Defensive running. We saw some really good defensive running. Sharman was one on the weekend. Darcy Wilson in the dying sort of minutes of the last quarter. How important is that, Alana, from a team perspective, to be able to get those stops at crucial points? And how can that impact us winning the game as well?
Yeah, well, I think that's pretty much what won us the game in the last quarter. It was like Wilson was huge. Like, what a game from a guy who's played 3-4 games. That was just like, I think, what we've all been really wanting as a young kid to step up and show us what he's got. And that was just like that was just a great last quarter from him. I was stoked with that. Even Wilkie stood up. That's not so much a defensive running, but I thought Ross was really good at that in the last quarter too. I really noticed him in the last quarter. He was sort of everywhere, helping out. So I think we're all going to have to dig in, and it's going to have to be a team effort, and it's going to have to be 4 quarters. If we even play 3 quarters, we're not going to get the job done. So that's what's scaring me, because we just haven't had a 4-quarter game yet. But we're going to have to bring it this weekend to be any sort of chance, as well as the forward pressure too. So not only the other end of the ground, but so frustrating when the ball just goes straight in and out and there's just no one there to lock it in. That's probably the other thing that gets up my gears, but I think it comes down to the entry. Sometimes it's so easy for it to come out, but if we can just lock it in there, and I think that's what we've missed a bit with Butler. He used to be so good at that. So if he's not kicking the goals, get amongst it, lock it in. If we're kicking behinds, at least give us more and more opportunities to convert it.
Yeah, Jakey.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those games where we can't carry any passengers, right? Like, it's just one of those games where everyone's just, even if Filippo's had his 15 and, that's what he usually gets, throw in 4 or 5 tackles in there. It's got to be a high pressure game. I think if we're high on tackles and we've got those extra stoppages in there, I don't think it's going to suit the Giants. I think they want it to be as open, as free flowing and uncontested as possible. So if we get in their face and slowing the game down and chipping it around high marks, being very methodical, that's on our terms. I think that will frustrate them. So the first 15, or even the first 10 minutes, honestly, is going to be massive. We'll know then if we're up for it or not.
Yeah, and I think Ross is, as I mentioned earlier, the way he had his presser today, the way they responded after the halftime last week, I think he's decided to come out and not be so cuddly anymore, and really sort of drill into them. They've got a really big opportunity here. And what better way to go to Canberra, get away from Melbourne, take on the most informed side of the competition, albeit in Canberra, not their home ground, but they still class it as a second home. I think it's a really, really good opportunity. Just before we do finish up, I do want to just grab everyone's thoughts that are watching from home, who they think will win and the margin as well. And I'll grab your 3 guys' thoughts on that as well. So Saturday, who's winning and how much are they winning by?
I'm not going first. You can go, Tom, mate. You go.
Oh my goodness! All right, I'll be honest and say that in my footy tipping competition, I've tipped the Giants, but that's mainly because I don't want to be the only one that tips St Kilda and then gets blown away. At the same time as having said that, I feel like it's one of those games where, like, typical St Kilda to me is putting in the effort we put against Richmond last week and usually losing that game. And then the next week playing a team that we're not tipped to beat at all and causing an upset or running them close. So I don't feel like we're going to get blown out. If it's the St Kilda, I was going to say the St Kilda we know and love, but probably not so much with that kind of variation of effort. But if it's, anything we've seen like over the past few years, I feel like we will rock up because we tend to rock up for the big games. We don't tend to get blown out of the water too often. It's just a matter of whether we can, get over the line or not.
And I mean, We've played. Who have we played this year? Collingwood and Geelong. If you look at the way we've played, and those were two big games against two quality opposition. If you go back to that, you think, well, the boys haven't really given me that many reasons against good teams to not at least sort of trust them to rock up. I think, like we said at the very start, I think we struggle against teams that we go into the game thinking, yeah, we'll walk this pretty comfortably. There's not going to be any of that in the change rooms this week. Everyone knows they're going to give it 150%. So, having said that, Saints by 1. I'll go Saints by 1. Another heart stopper.
Oh, God.
I don't think I can do another heart stopper. I think my age is getting up there, and it's too much on the heart. I want ones that, by the third quarter or, start of the fourth quarter, it's 35 points. Kick your first 2 goals. You can just relax, have a jump around and laughter with the fans around. Alana, what are your thoughts?
Look, if I wasn't looking at it with my one eye, on paper, Giants are probably a 4 or 5 goal better team on paper, especially given our injuries and things. So if I was looking at it like that, I'd probably say, yeah, Giants by 4 or 5 goals. But no, the Saints are going to come out and they're gonna take them on like they do when they don't have the pressure, I guess. Because as soon as we're expected to win, we just can't deal with that. So I do like when we're the underdog. So maybe I don't like honourable losses, but if we could keep it under like around the 10-point mark, I'd probably take it. Not that I ever like losing, but given it's the Giants, so I'll probably say the Giants by 10 points.
Well, that's fair. I mean, it's all about knowing where we stand as a football side. Again, we're going up against the best team in the competition right now. Prior to the season, looking at the 4 games we played, we probably would have been scheduled for 2-2. I don't think many teams had us beating Collingwood or Geelong. They probably had us beating Essendon and Richmond. Didn't work out absolutely perfectly, but by the end of it, 2-2, I'm pretty happy with that. I actually think we can win this, and without being one-eyed or anything, I think this is actually a game, as we discussed, that we can come out, pressure's off, head down, get into it, really control the tempo of the game, be on a bigger field, allow the likes of Hill, Naz, Sinclair, Wilson, those sort of players to use the width of the ground. And if we can kick accurately, which at the moment seems like the toughest ask in football, but if we can do that, then I wouldn't be surprised if we come around 15, 20-point winners.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
And everyone can hold me to that. So I'm not going to. I'm happy to cop back if it works out that we lose by 50. But that's just the way I see how we match up. So again, I want to thank you 3, Jake, Alana, and Tom, for joining me tonight, discussing the Giants game, and for everyone at home as well. It's really been good interactions, and lots of positive comments and discussion around this week's lineups. Just remember, Saturday, it is the early game. I think it's about 1:45. I could be wrong there, but it is the Saturday afternoon at Marnica. If you can get down there, warm up because it'll be cold, and watch the Saints play. Otherwise, watch on TV, and we will be back next week to discuss it heading to the next round. So stay safe, Sainers, and as always, go Saints.
Go Saints.
Go Saints.